Dune is a 1965 science fiction novel by Frank Herbert. Many people have tried to make a movie adaptation of this beautiful work of art, but the best one so far in my opinion, and some others, is 2021's adaptation by Denis Villeneuve. Look, you might say with the progression of filmmaking technology and CGI work, previous attempts would have been better. But it's worth mentioning Denis Villeneuve tried to use practical effects as much as possible. We're not here to talk about technicalities of filmmaking. Instead, let's briefly talk about the process of world building and the architecture of spaces that portray the beautiful scenery in Dune 2021. Just to be clear, the focus here is the overall architectural form and how they are shown to build up characteristics for each nation in the story. With that being said, let's get into it. The first one is the spaceport on the ocean planet Caladan. There's the terminal building and the greeting platform. Also, you can see two hexagon-shaped towers on the cliffside here. Now, this architectural form is repeated in the buildings on Caladan, as you will see similar towers in the main mansion of the Duke. But back here, you can see there's an area for a spaceship to land, and there's the military parade platform here. Focusing on the terminal, there's an air traffic, or in this case, space traffic control tower in the middle of the building that's on top of what we can assume is the terminal hall to connect different spaces together. These two separate buildings here are for aesthetics, we think, but they can function as some sort of residency for the military too. Alright, next one is the House of the Duke, and as you can see, it's pretty similar to the spaceport terminal building, and the topography is different here. The main mansion is in the mountain rift, and behind it is a couple of buildings that might be the staff residency or housing for the Royal Guard. And now something odd happens here. There are two other buildings, one of which we can assume is an aviation dock, and there's another whose purpose is not clear, especially because it has some kind of modern style compared to the terminal building and the mansion. Perhaps they use traditional concepts for their residential buildings and the same concept for the terminal building in order to show their heritage and culture to newcomers. Let's move on. The third one is the Giedi Prime spaceport. Other than being super moody and grim, you really can't tell what's going on in this scene, but we'll try anyway. There's a dome-shaped building with huge mechanical doors at the top, which led us to believe the weather must be rough for airplane hangars to sit out in the open. The scale of this building must be huge. Otherwise, we have a lot of unnecessary consoles coming out of it from all sides. At the base of the building, there are three openings that connect to what appears to be an over-the-top transportation system. And that's about it. The third world is Arrakis. And we want to talk about the fortress stronghold, which is the primary building in the city. The ziggurat shape is almost a reminder of the pyramids, and it has many levels sitting on top of each other. Dune production designers have done a great job blending the architecture with the environment, and it's best seen here when the Thopters approach the city. You almost can't tell there are buildings in the background for a second. As they get closer, they land here in the courtyard at the main entrance. Obviously, there's a lot going on here, but just like Giedi Prime, you almost can't tell which is which. The objective here was to make a building that can provide protection from the heat, killing sun, sandstorms, and giant worms, so it makes sense for the architectural forms to appear reticent. Let's let the visual work speak for itself. And finally, let's talk about the ecological testing station. Now, in the movie, we don't see an exterior shot of this facility, but interior shots were really beautiful, and we had to talk about this one. And just a side note here, we have other segments in the making for interior designs and vehicles of this movie, so stay tuned and subscribe if you don't want to miss out. This facility has everything lined up for a sandy desert landscape, from underground access tunnels to secret passages and an open underground grand hall. Also, there are the labs, the library, and an underground Thopter landing platform. If you've seen the movie, we recommend re-watching these sequences because they look just amazing. From small Thopters to city-sized spaceships, Dune 2021 is packed with sci-fi futuristic vehicles. In our last video, we explored the architecture of Dune. Now, let's take a look at these machines and their designs, in the order of their appearance in the movie. 1. Spice harvesters. In the opening scene, we see these small vehicles, which look quite different from the larger harvesters the Duke investigates later on. These smaller machines resemble snails and are likely used for jagged, less accessible areas. Their design has three main sections: cargo tubes, the cockpit, and the tracks. 2. Carrioles. These flying rovers attach cables to the harvesters and deploy 4 balloons to lift and transport them over long distances. 3. Harkonnen interstellar spaceships. These massive ships don't rely on combustion rockets to take off and reach orbit. Instead, they use anti-gravity mechanisms. After all, it's sci-fi. Their design resembles a bar of soap, similar to the alien spaceships in the movie Arrival. 4. Interstellar bridges. While not technically vehicles, these structures help transport other spacecraft, so we decided to include them in this category. Five, Imperial spaceship. This eyeball-shaped ship follows the design theme associated with the Imperial entities in the movie. The ecological testing facility, for example, shares similar design concepts. Once again, anti-gravity technology is at play. 6. Atreides fighter planes. These high-speed airships are the Dune equivalent of fighter jets, designed for single-pilot operation. A fleet of these fighters would be a serious threat to anyone challenging the Atreides. 7. Bene Gesserit ritual spaceship. We only get a glimpse of this relatively small ship in the movie. Given the subtle nature of the Bene Gesserit, it's likely they don't travel in large numbers. 8. Atreides interstellar spaceships. These enormous vessels transport entire fleets across the galaxy. Unlike the typical round shapes of other interstellar vehicles in the film, these ships are designed to resemble the V-shaped Atreides emblem displayed on their flags. 9. Arrakis thopters. These dragonfly-inspired thopters can seat 6 people plus cargo. The visual style is intentionally analog, with blades that don't rotate but flap, just like a dragonfly's wings. 10. Arrakis harvesters. These harvesters, seen later in the movie, are much larger and have a flat cubical design. They're used to harvest spice in open desert fields. The machines suck up sand, separate the spice, store it, and release the remaining sand as a dust cloud. They're transported over long distances by carrioles with large balloons. 11. Spotter aircrafts. These drones scout for worm activity, alerting the harvesters to move when one is detected. Agile and highly responsive, they can quickly change course and reach their destination. 12. Harkonnen attack ships. These tactical airships are used to deploy soldiers from the mothership to target locations. Unlike other ships, they appear to rely on aerodynamic principles for maneuverability.
You've probably seen hundreds of sci-fi movies that have tried to make futuristic scenes with digital buttons and knobs, slick surfaces, and a lot of whites and blue lights. Although they make you wonder about the future and push the boundaries of science fiction out further, that's not entirely the case for Denis Villeneuve's version of Dune. Patrice Vermette, Dune's production designer, was faced with the task of designing 10,000 years in the future for this movie. But instead of looking through the stack of state-of-the-art technology, he looked back at various architectural styles, from Egyptian and Aztec pyramids to World War II bunkers to get inspired. Well, I don't have to say how successful he was designing the sets of Dune 2021, considering how massive of a hit it was as soon as it was premiered. So without any more stalling, let's take a look at interior designs of this movie. We can categorize each space by the planet they're on. We'll have 3 different architectural styles based on the location. Spaces on Caladan, on Giedi Prime, and on Arrakis. The imagery we see in the interior scenes on Caladan are displayed in a way that shows a pleasant human climate is going on that planet. And also it's a nod to the Atreides house being warm and noble. Almost all interiors have an octagonal structure, and the attention to the details in fixtures and decoration is quite remarkable. Material palette includes stone walls for the structure of the building, naturally for its long-lasting feature, latticed windows as a royal feature to the space, to keep the feeling of the space warm, wooden floors and ceilings, Persian rugs, once again as a royal feature, inlaid wooden furniture, wooden reliefs on the walls, and so on. Placement of these materials next to each other creates an imposing and royal feeling, and in the same time induces a warm and a relaxed atmosphere. An interesting thing is that in all the spaces that we see in this movie, only the buildings on Caladan have windows. Another detail is the lattice work of those windows seem to be repeated in the partition details. Furniture sets in interior scenes on Caladan follows a single design concept. Heavy wooden furniture with sloping bases and symmetrical inlays. You can see how balanced they were designed. Okay, moving on. Unlike the warm and royal spaces of Caladan, Giedi Prime shows a cold and a brutal atmosphere. But of course, they preserved the elements of grandeur for these spaces too, because nonetheless, the House Harkonnen is a powerful player in this universe. But you can look at these scenes and come to the conclusion that these are some ruthless and dry people living here. A dark foyer with its narrow entrance, tall metal columns, bare concrete floor, low power light coming from above gives the space an unpleasant feeling. In the main ceremonial room, except for the throne and 2 chairs on either side, you can't see any furniture in these scenes. The black reflective color of the throne increases the feeling of coldness even more. We only see 2 interior spaces from the scenes on this planet. One is the Baron's bath and the other is the foyer, and they both look dark and cold. Scenes of Arrakis covers most of the movie's time, so we see a lot of interiors here. But rather than resembling living spaces, they resemble bunkers built to protect against extreme weather and external threats. The main material used in these spaces is concrete, which, for the sake of the story, we can say it's likely to be a composite of the desert sand. Although walls and ceilings are formally expected to be built uniformly in such spaces because they look more futuristic, that's not the case here. Frame tilings are completely visible on these walls, and that shows how they built this building layer by layer, floor by floor, similar to the pyramids. You can see a lot of details in textures of those surfaces. In terms of material and color, they wanted to keep the integrity of the spaces intact, but at the same time, they meant for these sharp edges and volumes to be visible. The material used in these spaces are not very diverse. The furniture displayed here are integrated with the surrounding area, and even in some cases, furnitures are mounted directly in the walls. However, due to the residence of the Atreides family, some native decoration pieces of Caladan can be seen here. Between the sharp angles and interlocking volumes, interesting bronze reliefs can be seen on the wall, including the two we see in the royal bedrooms. To separate the use of each area, they've placed consoles and cubes of concrete everywhere in the room, on the walls, floors, and ceilings. They tried to show it as minimal and as functional as they can. Let's talk about lights. In buildings on Caladan, natural light enters the space either directly through the windows or through the skylights. And to emit light at nights and on dark areas, there are a sort of suspended lamps that illuminates a small amount of the surrounding area. We see a couple of versions of these lights, but they're shown in a way that their presence is almost not felt during the movie. In buildings on Giedi Prime, we can't see any openings letting some natural lights in. Of course, the reason of this could be that all the scenes we see on Giedi Prime are taking place during the night. But not in the Baron's bath scene and nor in the scene with the throne, no trace of natural light can be seen in the space, and the source of the ambient light we see are not visible. In buildings on Arrakis, light illuminates the space through overlapping openings indirectly. The sun intensity is powerful enough to light the interiors like this. The artificial lights we see are the same one we saw on Caladan. They must have brought them from their home planet.
No film is without its critiques. Here are some points that might be considered flaws or missed opportunities regarding the design and architecture in Dune. 1. Overly sterile aesthetic. Some critics argue that the overall aesthetic of Dune is too cold and sterile, especially in comparison to the rich, textured world building of the book. The minimalist, brutalist architecture of the film emphasizes scale and power, but lacks the warmth or organic feel that could have made the world feel more lived in. For example, the interiors of buildings, particularly on Arrakis, often feel more like corporate lobbies than homes or spaces where people interact with the environment. 2. Lack of cultural expression. The architecture in Dune leans heavily into grand monolithic structures, but there's very little in the way of ornamentation or details that convey the rich cultures of the various groups in the universe. For instance, the Fremen, a nomadic desert people, have an architecture that is practical, but it's largely hidden underground and doesn't offer a sense of their culture's identity beyond survival. Some fans feel that this could have been a great opportunity to show more about their way of life visually. 3. Monotone color palette. The film's architecture often blends into the environment, which can be effective for world building, but in Dune, it sometimes leads to a lack of visual contrast. The sand-colored, muted palette used for buildings in Arrakis can make them feel drab or indistinguishable from the desert landscape. While it emphasizes the harshness of the world, it doesn't always make for the most engaging or varied visual experience. 4. Lack of detail in vernacular architecture. The film focuses on massive, imposing structures like the Harkonnen Palace and the Atreides Fortress, but there's little attention given to the smaller, everyday architecture of the world. There's a missed opportunity to show how the common people of Arrakis live, how they adapt to the harsh climate, and what kinds of materials or designs they use to survive. This could have provided more depth and texture to the world, but instead, much of the architecture feels generic and utilitarian. 5. Inconsistent scale and spatial logic. While the monumental scale of the structures in Dune is impressive, the sheer size of the buildings can sometimes feel overwhelming and impractical. The vast, empty spaces inside palaces and fortresses can feel disconnected from reality, as if the spaces are designed more for aesthetic effect than practical living. This can detract from the believability of the world, making the viewer question how such enormous structures are maintained or used on a day-to-day basis. 6. Overemphasis on brutalism. The brutalist style in Dune makes sense thematically, harsh, unforgiving, and reflective of the struggles on Arrakis, but it can also feel repetitive. Almost every structure in the film follows this brutalist monolithic aesthetic, which can become visually monotonous after a while. There's little variation in architectural style between the planets, even though different cultures and environments could have influenced more diversity in design. 7. Underutilization of technology. For a sci-fi film set in a distant future, the architecture in Dune is surprisingly low-tech in appearance. There are very few visual cues that suggest advanced technology beyond spaceships and shield generators. The buildings, while massive and awe-inspiring, often look like ancient structures rather than the product of advanced engineering or technology. Some fans feel that a more futuristic or innovative approach to architecture could have better conveyed the advanced state of the universe. 8. Missed opportunity with Harkonnen aesthetic. The Harkonnen aesthetic, especially in the scenes on Giedi Prime, feels dark and imposing, but some viewers felt that it lacked depth or complexity. The stark black industrial look of their architecture might come off as a bit cliched for a villainous faction in science fiction, and there was potential to explore more unsettling or unique design elements to reflect their sadistic, corrupt nature. While these points don't detract significantly from the overall impact of Dune, they highlight how the design could have pushed further into the richness of the world and the complexity of its cultures. The film excels in its visual grandeur, but the architecture may feel too detached or underdeveloped for some viewers. For all the good features of Dune's architecture and design, you can check out this video. If you were captivated by the stunning environments in the first film, you're in for a treat, because the sequel takes everything to a whole new level. Welcome back to the fascinating world of Dune. In this video, we're diving deep into the incredible architecture and design and that make Dune Part 2 a visual masterpiece. The results for production design in this film is nothing short of spectacular, from the hidden sanctuaries of the Fremen to the imposing fortresses of the Harkonnens. Every structure in this film has a story to tell. So, all you have to do is to join us as we explore the architecture and designs that shapes the epic landscapes of Dune Part 2. Whether you're a fan of the books, the films, or just love great design, there's something here for everyone. We start on Arrakis with the Fremen sieges, underground sanctuaries that blend so perfectly with the desert landscape that they're nearly invisible. The organic, flowing lines of these spaces mimic natural rock formations, a clever design choice that echoes the Fremen's deep connection to their environment. Siege Tab is masterfully integrated into the natural rock formations of Arrakis. The exterior is camouflaged to blend seamlessly with the surrounding landscape, a perfect adaptation to the harsh, unforgiving environment. The design is organic and fluid, echoing the shapes and textures of the desert itself. Upon entering, we're immediately struck by the contrast between the harshness of the outside world and the sanctuary within. The interiors of Siege Tabor are designed with purpose. Every line and hollow serves a function, from storing precious water to providing safe spaces for the community. The use of natural rock as both structure and insulation showcases the Fremen's deep understanding of their environment. Lighting within Siege Tabor is minimal but strategic. Natural light filters in through small, well-placed openings, casting long, dramatic shadows that add to the sense of mystery and protection. The materials used are primarily stone and sand, which not only camouflage the siege from the outside, but also help maintain a stable temperature inside, crucial for survival in the extreme desert conditions. The communal areas are the heart of Siege Tabor, where the Fremen gather for rituals, meetings, and daily life. These spaces are both functional and symbolic, reinforcing the strong sense of community and shared purpose that defines Fremen culture. The design is simple, yet every element has been carefully considered to ensure it meets the needs of the people who live here. As we shift from the Sieges to the city of Arrakis, we see a stark transformation. Once under House Atreides, the city now bears the heavy mark of Harkonnen occupation. Where we once saw the sleek and functional interiors of the Atreides, we now see the imposing, brutalist feeling of the Harkonnens. The structures are the same, but the way it's shown is surely different. Massive, angular structures that cast long shadows over the city. Once again, these buildings aren't just places to live or work. They are symbols of dominance, designed to intimidate and oppress. Next, we travel to Giedi Prime, the home of House Harkonnen, where the architecture takes on an even more nightmarish scale. Here, the designs are harsh and industrial, with structures so massive they dwarf the people within them. The curved, rib-like formations inside these buildings give the unsettling impression of being inside a living, breathing machine. This is a world where architecture reflects the cruelty and control of its rulers, a place designed to make you feel small and powerless. In contrast, the imperial environments showcase a different kind of power. The geometric patterns and monumental scale of these spaces are meant to inspire awe and reverence. The Empire's architecture is all about stability and eternal rule, as we see on Caladan, the capital planet of Imperium. We see a design of a utopian green environment, even as the cracks in their authority begins to show. Pay attention to the way light cuts through these spaces, bright, sharp, and always controlled, symbolizing the Empire's grip on the galaxy. The Spacing Guild, with its enigmatic presence, introduces yet another architectural style. Their facilities are marked by abstract forms and impossible geometries, reflecting their mastery over space and time. Though we only get glimpses of these spaces, they leave a lasting impression, hinting at the Guild's unique role in the universe. We think the Empire's camp within the shield walls at the end of the film was their role. Throughout Dune Part 2, lighting and atmosphere play critical roles in defining these diverse environments. Whether it's the blinding sun of Arrakis or the oppressive darkness of Giedi Prime, light is used to tell the story as much as the structures themselves. The choice of materials, whether it's the rough stone of the Sieges or the cold metal of the Harkonnen fortresses, adds another layer of narrative, highlighting the cultural and philosophical differences between the factions. As we step back to take in the architectural landscape of this film, it's clear that these designs do more than just set the scene. They immerse us in a world that feels ancient, yet undeniably futuristic. Every structure, every room, every vast cityscape tells a story of power, survival, and the endless struggle for control. In the end, the true achievement of Dune Part 2's architectural design lies in its ability to make the unimaginable feel real, to bring Frank Herbert's epic vision to life in a way that's both visually stunning and deeply symbolic. It's a cinematic journey that leaves a lasting impression, reminding us of the incredible power of design and storytelling. Throughout Dune Part 2, every design choice helps build a world that feels both ancient and futuristic. The architecture, gadgets, and symbols all play a crucial role in storytelling, bringing this vision to life with stunning visuals and deep symbolism. Whether it's the practical thumpers and still suits, the subtle yet powerful wind traps, or the iconic house symbols that define each faction, these elements all come together to create a world that feels as real as it is fantastical. Our journey begins with the Thumper, a device as simple as it is crucial. Imagine standing in the vast, shifting sands of Arrakis. In your hand, you hold what looks like a metallic stake. This is your Thumper, your first line of defense against the monstrous sandworms that roam the desert. With each rhythmic pound into the sand, it creates vibrations that lure these behemoths away from your location. Now let's talk about what you're wearing, the still suit. This isn't just clothing, it's a marvel of engineering that keeps you alive in the unforgiving desert. Every drop of moisture your body produces, sweat, breath, even urine, is reclaimed and recycled into drinkable water. The suit's sleek, form-fitting design isn't just for aesthetics. Every layer, every fiber serves a purpose, working in harmony with your body's natural processes. It's a testament to the Fremen's deep understanding of their environment and their bodies. But survival on Arrakis isn't just about individual equipment. Look closely at the rocky outcrops, and you might spot a wind trap. These ingenious structures are nearly invisible, blending seamlessly with the landscape. They harvest moisture from the air itself, providing precious water to entire Fremen communities. It's a large-scale application of the same principle that governs the still suit. In the world of Dune, information is as vital as water. This is where scope lenses come in. These aren't just ordinary binoculars. Fremen scouts use various types of lenses, each designed for a specific purpose. Some cut through the desert glare, others detect the slightest movement from afar, and some allow for pinpoint accuracy in combat situations. Mastering the use of these lenses can mean the difference between life and death in the open desert. Communication across the vast expanses of Arrakis presents unique challenges. The Fremen radio might look rugged and primitive at first glance, but this durable device allows for long-range coordination of Fremen activities. Its design prioritizes reliability in extreme conditions, the ability to communicate across great distances. And finally, we come to a weapon that embodies Fremen tactical brilliance. In a world where massive ornithopters dominate the skies, the Fremen needed a way to level the playing field. This launcher fires adhesive mines or explosives that stick to enemy aircraft. It's a perfect example of asymmetric warfare, using relatively simple technology to take down advanced enemy forces. The weapon's effectiveness lies not just in its destructive power, but in its ability to create chaos and confusion among enemy ranks. As we shift our focus to the broader world of Dune, let's take a closer look at the Harkonnen Ornithopter pilot headgear. These neural interface headpieces create a direct connection between the pilot and their aircraft, allowing for unparalleled control and precision in flight. The distinctive design, with advanced visual interfaces and life support systems, blends form and function seamlessly. Nowhere is the Harkonnen approach more evident than in their command center. The strategic console dominates the room, a black monolith, pulsing with holographic displays. Real-time battle information floats in the air, allowing Harkonnen strategists to control their forces across the planet. The console's design, angular, cold, efficient, mirrors the Harkonnen worldview. It's a stark contrast to the organic, adaptive technology of the Fremen. Even in the far future, there's a need to record and preserve information. The transcription device we see in Dune Part 2 is a fascinating blend of advanced technology and tangible output. Its sleek design features a metallic cylinder that stores transcribed text, surrounded by various controls for input and adjustment. It's a reminder that in the world of Dune, Not all technology is about war and survival. There's also a place for knowledge and record keeping. As we've seen, the world of Dune is a masterclass in design and world building. Pay attention to these details. They're the building blocks of this incredible world. And, as always, thank you for watching. See you next week.